Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 114. It's hard to believe, but 114 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we're coming to you once again from the worldwide headquarters of GSM Services. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We have Dwayne Burks with us today, who is involved with multiple organizations, including the Gateway Gaston, where he is the director and chaplain, and also First Baptist Church, where he was just recently named the senior pastor. We've got this great press release that Naomi found for us, but also know of Dwayne's involvement in other community concerns over the years. So, Dwayne, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be here. This is neat because this is a piece of our community to be inside this building.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's neat.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of fun, and man, we've met so many great people over the years, or over the last, it'll be 3 years in March when we first recorded the episode. So, like we normally do, Dwayne, we're going to get right to it. So, if you don't mind, just for our listeners who may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you'd like to share.
I'm a native of Catawba and Alexander counties.
Okay.
Grew up there, but met my wife and in college in Greenville. And after college, we lived there a while I was going to school. She'd already finished. We moved here in '88, and it's her home and it's my home, and we love it. We've reared 4 great children. We have Kelsey, Bobby, Walter, and Victoria. And I had to think about it a minute. And they're here. One is a teacher, one is a nurse, one does marketing.
Okay.
And one is still young and getting ready to go to the next level.
Well,
But it's great. Have 4 grandchildren. That's what really matters.
very good. Yeah.
Fill them up with fizzy soda, send them home.
Yeah, I hear I hear how you get to do all the things like kids, but don't have to deal with some of the aftermath.
That's right. 2 of them we got like that. Our daughter and her husband adopted.
Oh, wow.
So we went from 2 to 4 overnight.
Okay.
So that's special. Really special.
Well,
so
good.
That's me.
I'm not quite there yet, but maybe in the next few years that could happen.
Yeah. But that's a little bit about me.
Okay, well, we appreciate that. Our listeners like to learn a little bit about our listeners besides what maybe organization or what specific topic we might cover. So if we can, maybe let's first talk about the Gateway Gaston. I'm a person, just with all of my community involvement, I'm familiar with it somewhat, but probably I'm sure I'm going to learn something today, but maybe our listeners aren't familiar with that. So maybe just what is the Gateway Gaston, your involvement, how did it get started, that kind of thing, and then we'll just kind of talk about the mission and initiatives for the organization.
So when I came in right after 9/11, I lost my corporate job. 1,800 of us were downsized from Citigroup like that. I called my wife. I said, I just lost my job. She said, good. I'm like, what do you mean good? She said, that job was killing you.
Oh.
She said, you never would have left, so now it's left you. So believe it or not, we ended up with 4 kids, 14 and under, moving to England. Stayed over there for 6 months and did this temporary assignment with a church, and it transformed my life. Transformed our whole family's lives. So I came back, and I thought, I don't want to go back into corporate. So I retooled my education, got ordained, and pastored a small church in South Gastonia for 14 years. Loved it. Church was struggling, had 7 or 8 people, grew not the typical way. We grew by having, in our basement, we turned that over to another ministry, and they served meals and had a worship service every day of the year. And then our regular sanctuary, we met in that, but then we shared it with Angel Ayala, who passed away just this past year, tragically, got stung by a bee. Just gone at 52 years old. But his church, a Spanish-speaking church, shared the upper half of the building. So we had something happening 7 days a week, 365, and the least of which was the church. So it was really nice. But my season was up. It was time. We were just telling somebody this morning, I just wept when those days were over, but I knew it was time. But during that time, I was working because they couldn't support a full-time pastor in human service at a couple middle schools.
Okay.
And I loved it. I love middle school. And I grew to just see the great need for human service with dignity in our community. And every time I would go to any kind of meeting, the same answers came, or the same things came up. We need a new resource guide. Well, by the time somebody did a resource guide, it was outdated. So we took the lead. We worked with, at that time, the United Way, with Caramont, with others. We brought in probably 120 people from different agencies, multiple sessions, and we built a primary leadership guide. And we made the commitment to sustain it. And that launched the Gateway. So now, if a person has a need, a human need of any kind, how to get a bill paid, what to do if I lose my job, anything, they can go to the Gateway. They can either text us or go to our website, gatewaygaston.org, and within 90 minutes, they will hear back. And we will, with dignity, try to connect them.
Okay. Now,
that has revealed to us a lot of gaping holes in the service systems, and that's part of what we advocate for now. And we're about, I hope February 1st is the launch date to launch a new pilot. We cover that 8 to 8 now, 7 days a week,
okay.
8A to 8P. And if you hit it during that time, you're going to get a call back within 90 minutes. We are going to launch a new program in large part to help our law enforcement so they have help overnight. You can hit your phone, go to the website, and you have a chat bot there. It seems like a live person who will walk you through it and give you the answers you need. And if you need a live person, you hit another button, 90 minutes from 8 o'clock in the morning, you'll hear back. Same thing, but it'll increase us from 12 hours to 24/7.
Gotcha.
So that's where we're headed. The good thing is it's all virtual. We don't need offices. We don't need big staff. We have one part-time staff, and I work there on a stipend basis. And it runs well. And the reason we've been successful is not the data. The data is the same, but it changes because the organizations change their focus or their staff. We've tried to do this relationally. So when Jane changes jobs at this agency, we know it and we get our information updated. It's worked. We serve 2,000 to 3,000 families a year.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. What's a typical number of people that you're engaging with, during a year or a month or whatever the case may be? So, what would you say? I'm sure you probably already described it, but what is kind of the mission? Is it simply just connecting individuals with the services that they need locally? Is that or is there something a little more detailed than?
Our function is to connect people with resources with dignity.
Okay.
Because their stories are all very similar. Based on where your place is, you see lots of people with needs walking up down your street.
Sure,
their stories are very similar. And that we can get immune to that if we're not careful in human service. That's our function. Our goal is to build out a better way of collaborative service that draws people into it. And that has begun to happen. We've seen collaborative things happen in not just meetings, but in programming and in events that heretofore had never been collaborative. Each had done their own. That's really our mission, is to build collaboration for the common good. And we love that. So that's really what we're after. We're kind of like Amazon. Amazon's a retail company, but they're a data company. We're not driving data. We're trying to drive relationships. So,
yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned the chatbot. It's for us, the technology is changing so many things, and most of it is good if it's used properly. So I think this is a good example of that, right?
Yeah.
Where even for us and our business, communication is 24/7. I mean, we have people contact us at all hours of the day, and no longer is it just 8 to 5. I mean, we get communication through social media.
Yeah.
It's wild just how things have changed there. So it's good to hear because there's a few places in technology where I think it's not so great.
Right.
But I think that's a good example of where it's a chatbots are a form of AI, really, in how that can be utilized, right? Because I'm sure there's a level of anxiety and waiting on somebody to contact them and not knowing what to do next, and so I'm sure just some type of response is going to help someone immediately in some level.
I can't tell you how many times people have wept and said, "Just thank you for calling me back."
Right.
There's a dignity to that. And our next step, which we wanted to take first, and to the wisdom of people around me, we tapped the brakes. Our next step, and I don't have a timeline for it, I hope 2025, will mean that we will have virtual coaches, cognitive coaches. Because the symptoms are you can't pay your water bill. The reason for that sometimes is there are cognitive challenges because you've lived in poverty so long. So that's another thing that we've been fortunate enough to do, is to educate the community on what it's like to live in poverty. People, we don't know if we've never lived there.
Sure.
I lived in poverty as a child, but didn't realize I was poor until I became an adult. So that's been another thing that's really been good for us. We do a session called Why People Do What They Do. It's a study in social and class norms and values. And that has really been the launching point for virtually all of our key partner churches, because there's a lot of houses of worship partnered with us. So, and that's where most of them have launched, if it's really taken root.
So in your time, and this is a question I like to ask, and I'm not sure how this would apply, but do you have any, looking back on your time, since you've been involved with the Gateway Gaston, is there a example that you can think of a success story or something looking back of some, obviously without sharing any specific information, but an example of an individual or a family that you knew was helped and you were like, wow, that shows this is the reason that this organization is here?
And there are so many of those.
Okay.
Go to our website. You'll see a few of those, gatewaygaston.org. You will also see our intern success stories.
Yeah, I actually was on there yesterday. I saw some of that. Yep.
Our interns have been amazing. I just last night looked, because we're going to engage an intern through the Gateway at First Baptist. We've done about 5,000 hours that we can document of intern services at no cost to Gaston County over the last 10 years. And that's probably being a little low on it, but we'd rather be conservative than overstate it, because we're not running for office. So, but and this story to me tells it best. Young woman, I'll call her Sally. I met her when we were just formulating the Gateway. We were getting our feet under us, and she had been in prison. She had never lived as an adult in freedom. She went into prison at 17, came out at 35. Pretty egregious past. It was horrible. But now she'd paid her dues. She did everything that we asked. She took the steps. Most people don't want to do anything, it seems, but solve the immediate problem. She saw down the road, and today she is working. She is gainfully employed. She is ordained as a chaplain. She serves as a volunteer at the Gateway. And if I have somebody who has been incarcerated or a family member that's dealing with us, I can put them in her purview, and she knows how to deal with them. Her journey has been hard. It has not been linear, but she is.
Is it fair to say she can just relate more than maybe many because of her own experience?
We can sympathize with somebody. She can empathize.
Oh, yeah.
She knows, and it's amazing. And there are other stories like that. Tragically, there aren't as many as you would think, because we've learned our big thing that we do is sift and sort. Who's ready to make a change? And that number has consistently been between 15 and 18%. And I'm like, my goodness, that's terrible. But then a guy named, I can't remember his name, he's written all these small group books, and he's great. He's tied to the Y. I met him in New York at a conference, and I had coffee with him afterward because he had said something about that. And I said, talk to me about this 15 to 18%, because he used the same number. And he said, well, think about it. You get 100 people in a room, and you say, how many of you want to live long, healthy lives? Yeah. Well, how many of you are willing to eat differently? Right. How many are willing to go to a gym? How many are willing to to put up with Sharon Paget and go to the Y? Not many. No, not many. No, but I love Sharon. But are you willing to do that? He said, if you can get 15 to 18 out of 100, that's huge.
That's a big number. Yeah, I would have guessed.
And I started feeling better about it. I think that is a next step to kind of shift for our community. If we will somehow sift, and I have a meeting about it this afternoon, sift and sort, we can put our resources where we can kind of hit the low-hanging fruit, because homelessness is taking us over. It's epidemic. Yeah. We're seeing first-time homeless like we've never seen before.
Yeah, and as you said, we have 2 locations here, and then West Gastonia on the corner of Airline and May Street. So between here and there, and we see it. Yep. I mean, I'm seeing it every day, and I'm not sure a time frame or a trigger point, but maybe it's COVID, or maybe I just became more aware of it because of my community involvement since then. But it does seem to be different since that time period. And to your point about change, my experience, is so many of us, we want the results from change, but we don't want to do what's necessary to bring about that change. And even in my own life, there's so many things there's some things I'm really good at and have changed a lot of things, but there's another group that I just haven't done what's necessary, even though I can see how those changes would be beneficial, and not just to me, right? It's to others around us. So
that's right.
So kind of a similar question, Dwayne. I mean, is there something you would say that you're most proud of accomplishing through the Gateway?
2 things: the dignity with which we've tried to handle everybody. In the last 18 months, I've had two clients that have escalated to me that were struggling. They didn't feel like they were dealt with dignity. I'm proud of that, because that means Fran on the front line, who does this every day, is keeping the faith, because she's dealing with everybody. But that's special to me. The other thing I'm really proud of is the odd collaborations that have emerged, like the one at First Baptist, the Gateway, and Hunter Huss that you're going to talk with Coach Phillips about in a few weeks. That kind of thing is what charges me up.
Yeah. Maybe so you at the risk of getting off track and at the risk of my Methodist background, let's talk about. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about First Baptist. So there seems like, and obviously we made in your introduction, we talked about you just being recently selected as a senior pastor at First Baptist. But there's some sounds to me like there's some unique things going on. So I don't want to give too much away, because we are going to talk to Troy, who I've known for a very long time. I coached his son, years ago through First Methodist Youth Sports. Wow. I mean, it was a blast.
Was he a baller then? Because he's a baller now.
Yeah, he was playing. Maybe he was the youngest on the team. Maybe even an age group. He should have been an age group below, probably. Yeah. But he played on my team with my youngest daughter, and we, thanks to him and a few other players, we were not dominant, but it had nothing. I'd assure you, it was not the coaching. It was purely the players, which at that age group is typically the way it goes, right? But it's a great family. So just kind of tell it. What would you like to share about what's going on there and some of those initiatives, and maybe just touch on what I'm going to be talking with him about in a few weeks.
Well, one of the things that emerged through my relationship with the Gateway and with First Baptist was I heard through a friend that Coach Phillips at Hunter Huss would love for his young men to go to church. They didn't have the opportunity. I think about half of them don't live with a parent. And then he told my friend, he said, they're all African-American. They're all AB students. And my thought was, I kind of know Troy. Let me reach out. I said, how can we feature their academic accomplishments, not just their entertainment value as athletes? And we talked and we thought, and I got Travis Page, our district attorney, and I were having coffee. And Travis said, well, wait a minute. We decided to do a church service. They came as a team. We rehearsed. We worked with them for about a month. And they led every component of the service at First Baptist, the call to worship, the prayer, we did the prelude at First Baptist on a snare drum. I'm just saying. There was some people's heads spinning around, but I think it was good. But they did it all except for a couple pieces of music that our music minister led. One of them even did a sermon. I helped him virtually. We worked in the cloud. We shared notes, and he preached. It was amazing. And then Travis came in and gave them a declaration of academic accomplishment, because Travis is seen through a different lens from a West Gastonia student of color than he might be seen through an East Gastonia Caucasian male,
right?
Different lens. And it really meant a lot to the team and to me. Those kind of collaborations would not have happened without my Gateway footprint, I guess.
Gotcha.
So, and what's happening at First Baptist, the few times they've been without a pastor recently, they would call on me and I would fill the pulpit and help. And once I even got somebody to speak for me at my church and went over and helped just on a Sunday because they were really in a bind. And Stephen, the previous pastor, I'd helped him do some funerals. He had a wedding and a funeral on the same day. So I had some relationships. They asked me to fill the pulpit. So I did for 6 months, turned into a year. Jonathan Bryson, who is brilliant, he contacted me. He said, Dwayne, we've made some changes at another church in town that have really worked, and they're working well. He said, what if you did that at First Baptist? And I said, well, Baptists don't change. And he said, well, it's been done in a Baptist church. So I'll tell you how little I thought the church leadership would receive it. I did my first draft of a strategic plan using artificial intelligence. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. Well, I kicked it out to our leadership group, and they bit. And I'm like, wow. So Jonathan and I worked pretty hard from that point, put together a 3-year plan that is so different than anything that's ever been done at First Baptist before. Not to the eyes, the service is the same and all that, but strategically engaging in a different way.
Understood.
And I'm excited about it. He is 15 hours a week. I'm 20 there. We continue to do other consultative work and Gateway, but this is my primary focus and his primary focus. And we just started this week, but already we have an opportunity that came out of a Gateway relationship. We'll be meeting tomorrow with a group that wants to do some space share, and they're serious about it. Well, this could put hundreds of people on our campus each week. Jonathan and I could serve as chaplains to those folks and get to know them, build relationships, but more importantly, I could develop lay chaplains within the congregation, and they take that role up.
Understood.
So it's about relationships.
Can you share real quick I read the press release, but for our listeners, can you share kind of who is Jonathan and what's that relationship?
Yeah. Jonathan is a guy that I met 10 years ago. I'm not even sure how I met him. Lives in Gastonia, I think he's in the historic district or just off. He called me about 5 years ago, well, right before COVID. He said, Dwayne, I want to be back in Gastonia. He said he was working in academia in Charlotte. He said, I want to be there. He said, that's why we live there. We want to serve the community. I said, Jonathan, nobody can afford you. You're an academic. He said, don't worry about money. I'll work that out. Well, that's music to my ears.
Yeah.
So I reached out to a couple pastors, told them about him, and one of my Gateway partner pastors at New Hope said, let's talk to him. Well, they ended up bringing him in. I really think they budgeted him in a secretarial role to get him on the staff as an on-staff consultant. And this is amazing. During COVID, Jonathan helped Brandon helped Jonathan, their congregation. They went from upside down financially to right side up. They grew in numbers during COVID.
I would imagine that's super unusual.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we're talking about live backsides in the seats, not just online. And they went from, Jonathan has a program he developed that he calls 6.5. You really only get people about a half day a week, really a couple hours is about what you get. And in using that model, they went from about 20% engagement by their members, which really meant sitting on a pew or serving on some kind of committee, to 80% during COVID.
Wow. Okay.
That's revolutionary.
That is super unusual.
And
yeah.
Our hope is that at a church like First Baptist, what's called a big steeple church, that we will see similar results and that we will truly become a formerly unsafe place. We will morph into a safe place for the marginalized, whether that means homeless, whether that means senior adult, whether that means person of color, whether that means LGBTQ+, they will be safe in a big steeple Baptist church. I don't know of many of those. So that's our goal. Big goal, but I'm 60 years old. I want to go out big. You know?
Oh, that's terrific. So, kind of the question I kind of lean into toward the end of these discussions is, and you may have just answered it, looking ahead for the Gateway or First Baptist Church or things that you're involved with. Well, what do you see down the road? And maybe that classic question is always 5 to 10 years, but man, things change so fast. I'm not even sure. Like here, we don't really look 5 to 10 years anymore. We look more like 2 or 3 because technology, the workforce, who knows what can happen. Something like COVID comes along. I mean, for us, it's been hard to even plan 5 and 10 years out anymore. So is what you just described the big goal, or is there something else within that future look?
For the Gateway, I hope what will happen is that, the Gateway is a regular nonprofit. I'm a Christian. So I hope God will raise up the next person to take it places I can't. I'm a creative person. I'm a big picture person. You don't want me handling details. You don't. You don't, Bill. I mean, Steve. You just don't.
I got you.
So I'm hoping that person, we had that person, and she looked at me one day. She says, I'm working on a master's degree in social work, and I'm going to make no money, and I'm going to fight grants to stay employed. She said, I'm going to go, and she was an adult learner. She said, I'm going to go get this job that I know I can do. I'll learn to do it as a financial advisor, and I'm going to support the work, but I'm only going to support works that are doing good work. And God bless her. That's why we were interning her, so she can make that decision. But I'm hoping that person will raise up, and I can fade away from the Gateway and not be we have a truck manual. It's a manual that says if Dwayne gets hit by a truck, here's what we do.
Sure.
I'm ready for somebody to take that, but not
without the truck.
Without the truck. I don't need the truck.
Right.
But, we are relocating after 32 years. We're moving 9 miles out to Crowder's Mountain. We have to build a house. So we sold our house. We have to be out January 30th. The truck won't get me. What will get me is my wife. We're going to live in an RV for a year while we build. So I may be at your house for a place to sleep.
Bless you.
All right?
Yeah, bless you.
But that's part of the Gateway, is to see that go places that it's poised to go. We had to build it while flying the airplane. Back in the Y days, we were raising $200,000 a year. It was tough, but it turned out to be the best thing. It gave us a good footprint. It gave us great credibility, and we love that. I love the why. I love Sharon. As hard as she is to love, I love her. Love working with her.
When your Sharon's the only 3-time guest of the Gaston's Great podcast.
You probably spent the first one just listening, But, yeah, she's awesome.
Great, yeah.
But for First Baptist, the best way I know to describe what I hope will happen is this piece that we start today at First Baptist. Today, at our family feast, Wednesday night meal, we have about 30 minutes a week to share, to teach. Jonathan's doing a noon Bible study on Wednesdays, but I do the evening one. Tonight, our activity will be to begin looking at the relational interactions of Christ in the Gospels. Who did he scold, and who did he especially bless and encourage? What we will find is he had a lot of harsh words for the religious people.
Sure did, yeah.
But he blessed the widow. He blessed the prostitute. He blessed the marginalized. So once we have adequate time to study that, and subsequently on Sundays, we're studying and learning who God is and what that means, because I never knew until finally it hit me in the head what grace was all about. But while we do that, I hope 7, 8, 9 months from now, and we already have the artist chosen, he's given us a price, that we will be able as a church to bring in or to do an activity where we identify all the marginalized groups we can think of. Maybe it's people with physical infirmities, people with motor skills, people in the LGBTQ community, transgender, whatever. And then as a church, we go through each one and say, okay, this marginalized group is older adults who are losing their mobility. Are we going to embrace them or are we going to tolerate them? This group is LGBTQ. Are we going to embrace them? Are we going to ostracize them? What does it mean to embrace them? Because what does that mean? As we decide with God as our guide, we lay those in a stack. And maybe we'll have 25 that we've identified, groups, all kinds of marginalized groups. This artist, Don Heineman, has told us that he will build for us, and I thought of this table that we're at when I saw it, when I had this idea. Because those who don't know, Joel told me this is from the original workbench that your dad used.
It was a work table that Dad had used for sure. Yeah,
so
sure is.
What I've asked Don to do is when we're ready, we'll give him those names of those groups. He will build for us a table that incorporates the identities of all those groups in the table somehow. And that will become a permanent fixture as part of First Baptist to remember that, yes, we're Big Steeple Church. Yes, we've been blessed, but Jesus hung out with the marginalized. And we want First Baptist to now become a place where, however you're marginalized, a lot of people have been marginalized by religion, a place where you're safe. That's my goal. That's my heart for First Baptist.
Well, very good.
So, yeah.
Well, good for you. And, you know what, and good luck. That is a big, I don't want to say unfortunately, but that's a big vision. Right?
It is.
And it's a good vision.
Well, and the fact that First Baptist called Jonathan after 149 years as their first ever African-American staff member is a big deal.
Right.
That's a big deal. It excites me.
Good.
I think the flip should be switched. He should be the pastor and I should be the associate, but it's age, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm with you. So, we do like to kind of shift gears, but before we do that, each episode, is there anything I haven't asked or should have asked? I mean, before we finish, maybe you'll get the last word on any final words before we close out the episode. But is there anything I haven't asked that I should have? Anything you'd like to share real quick before we kind of shift gears to these Gaston County questions that we subject our guests to?
It's been great. I've kind of watched Naomi's expression, and I thought if people listen with the same intensity you do, they're going to be excited about what we're talking about. Well, I appreciate the platform.
I know I've shared, Naomi, I've shared this many times on this podcast, and with many people, Naomi is one of the most faithful persons that I know. Yeah. And she has been quite a blessing to our team here and GSM and our customers. So, and this type of topic I would assume is right down your alley, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to recruit her. I don't know where you're involved in church and religion, but I'm going to recruit you to help. So it's collaboration. It's not stealing.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, but thank you for the platform.
Sure. So we're going to shift gears, and I do subject all of our guests to these Gaston County round of questions. So today I'm really going creative with the name. It's going to be the Gateway speed round of questions. Is that a good? That's really creative, isn't it, Naomi?
So the views represented are from Dwayne, not the Gateway. No. That's for my board.
Dwayne, a couple Gaston County questions. You have a favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Butter pecan.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Sundrop or cheer wine?
Sundrop.
Favorite local restaurant?
Kyle's But if Groovy Beast will open and put my picture on the wall, Aaron and I will talk again.
That's good. How about favorite outdoor activity in Gaston County or favorite park or something like that?
Oh, Crowder's Mountain.
Yeah, Crowder's is great.
Yeah, I'm up and down Crowder's when my knees aren't acting their age all the time.
How about, is there something you could share, be willing to share that very few people know about you?
I'm an open book. Okay, a couple things. One, I have had type 1 childhood diabetes since I was 6 years old.
Oh.
Thus the apple juice I have with me. My sister, since she was 2, my sister has 7 children, which is a miracle for anybody, let alone type 1 diabetic.
Oh, wow.
So that's something a lot of people don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. How about a book or something you could recommend to our listeners, or a blog? I even talk about blogs or other podcasts or articles or something that you could might recommend to our listeners.
I would beg people, come to my Facebook page and look at the album I have. I put a review of every book I've read, and I read 96 books this year. I love to read.
Good for you. Wow.
I've embraced the audiobook finally. That's helped. But for people who care about social homeless issues like that, there's a book called Evicted by Matthew Desmond. It's great. If you care about the what I call the struggle of religion, there's a book called Tired of Trying to Measure Up by Van Vonderen. It's great. But I could talk about books forever. And as far as podcast, my nephew has a podcast called True Crime Guys. It's amazing. It's produced right here in Gaston County.
Oh, wow.
It's
my wife and girls are big true crime podcast listeners. Yeah. I might have to. I don't know if they're aware of that one.
It's not my genre.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's him. But it's really cool. I'll go to sleep with headphones because my brain never stops, so that helps it stop. And I'll go to sleep, and I forgot to set the timer about 6 months ago, and I woke up at 3 a.m. and my nephew and my former son-in-law are in my ears, and I'm like, what is going on? Somehow I had shuffled onto one of the podcasts they did. So I turned that off quickly.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm a podcast. Like I'm in my vehicle now, or I'm running, whatever. I'm a podcast guy. So, matter of fact, that's kind of what led us to doing this. Is I'm just such a fanatic about podcasts. For me, it's spiritual, business, leadership. Just all kinds of different. And you can find there's a podcast on every topic imaginable.
I love The Moth. I love Snap Judgment. I love This American Life. Anything stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stories are where you learn.
So listen, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you indulging us on those few Gaston County related questions. So we're going to kind of head down to land this plane for us today, but a couple more questions, and then we'll finish up. Make sure our listeners know how to find more information out about the Gateway and things that you've got going on. But remember, this is a podcast about Gaston County and the good things happening in and around Gaston County, which I think there are many. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to go searching for them because nobody. It's hard to find good stories in social media and the media in general. But there's so many good things happening. You're a good example. So, but besides Gateway Gaston, the things going on at First Baptist Church that you're involved with, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
The people. I know everybody says that, but I've embedded in West Gastonia for 35 years now, and I've met the most amazing people. We're moving. It's only 9 miles, but we'll be out of the city, and it's killing me because I love this city.
Right.
But I know we'll get annexed maybe. But
I'll bet you.
The people, I mean, I just can't. I had coffee this morning with a music minister from St. Mark's. We went to the same college, didn't know each other, but different times. But just the guy's amazing. And I meet people like that every single day. And I love it. And the location. We're 2 hours from the beach, hour from the mountains.
It's
2 minutes from GSM.
I think it. But I do think because I born and raised here, spent a few years away at college. I've traveled domestically.
You went to Carolina, right?
That's a negative, sir. We'll move on from that. But I've traveled overseas, and I'm a complete homer for Gaston County.
Yeah, me too.
However, I just think it's a unique place. I've seen enough elsewhere that between the people, the location, the community, I don't know, it's just something. And I think I've actually seen it change in the last 8 to 10 years positively.
Yeah.
And it just seems to be more awareness or something. So again, I appreciate you sharing that. And you've got a good pulse. I would consider you somebody who has a good pulse on that as well, about kind of the goings on around here. The goings on around here?
Goings on. You are from Gaston County.
What was that? Can we edit that one out? So I say this, I think, every other episode. This is my favorite question, Dwayne. But knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
The world does not revolve around me. It does not. And the other thing is, God's not angry. I thought God was angry and I had to keep God happy.
Yeah.
And it was awful. It was awful. I've written a booklet about it. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But when I realized that, and it began to happen in Gaston County, this guy was preaching in a church I was in, and I'll tell you, it was Jeff Long. And Jeff hates it when I quote him because he considers me a rash liberal now, but that's all right. But Jeff says, we'll all believe we are saved by grace, which is evangelical talk. Everybody knows kind of what that means. And he said, but how many believe we live by grace? It was like an epiphany.
Yeah. And
I began to study grace, and I saw life, scripture, everything in a different light, and I wouldn't go back for all the tea in China. I just wouldn't do it.
Well, again, I grew up ARP. My wife grew up Baptist. Now we're Methodist.
Yeah.
So our kids are completely confused. But and I went to NC State. She went to Carolina.
Yeah.
So we have all kinds of issues. But the grace concept, especially, that's kind of the big foundation in the Methodist Church as well. And
yeah.
when something that is ultimately we have that's undeserved, that's a tough concept. It is a tough concept.
That's right.
for I struggle with that, because you're right. We think it's on somebody like me. I'm the engineer, the technical guy. I like data and information, and right. It should be based on deeds, right?
Yeah. And business is built that way. You don't make money by just riding the grace train.
Yeah, that's right.
But there are ways to do that are gracious and dignified.
Well, listen, Dwayne, I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate the stuff that you're involved with, and you do. The county and our community is better, in my opinion, because you're here, and I'm grateful for that. So, where can listeners go? This is to learn more about the Gateway, things that are going on, just whether it's online or social media, just anything and everything that you can share, so our listeners can go maybe find something else out.
For Gateway, it's just gatewaygaston.org or .com. Either one will get you there. There's an email there. You can hit the Gateway portal. Some people test it. Steve DeAvria hit it one time and said, this thing does work, but he was testing it, and God bless him. But so gatewaygaston.org. If you have church concerns, things like that, you can call our office. Our website's being upgraded soon.
Okay.
And it's there, but they got to get my data on there. But Alice at the office has been there 39 years. She knows everywhere I am, where I am, and what I'm doing. And then I would say the other place, believe it or not, is my personal Facebook page.
Okay.
It's a madhouse. It's about dad jokes and puns. And I'll get introduced to speak somewhere, and I'll think they're going to talk about my credentials or this, and they'll say, this is Dwayne Burks. He's here to speak. Go to his Facebook page because it's nuts. I'm like, wow, that's great. But yeah, and there's stuff there. So
well, everybody here at GSM will tell you that I'm all about a good dad joke.
Oh yeah.
In fact, our on hold messaging is me telling dad jokes.
I'm going to call on hold just to listen.
And we change it every month. So I hope we change it for January.
So when does a joke become a dad joke?
When my teenager gets a good eye roll from my teenager.
When it becomes apparent.
I can't believe I fell for that. And I'm the professional, Naomi.
I'm thinking he knows this one.
Actually, you know what? The second I said that, I didn't know that one, but you got me good. That's good. So, again, listen, I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate your time today. And like normal, I'm going to finish off with my own book recommendation and my thought for the week. I just happened to finish this book over the weekend. It was one I got was given to me for Christmas, and maybe somebody was trying to send me a message. I don't know. But the name of the book is by Will Bowen, called A Complaint-Free World. And it's a good book, but it's built around a concept where his organization is trying to help the world become complaint-free, because so many other things come with complaining too much. So maybe somebody was trying to send me a message when they handed me that. So anyway, you take that for what it's worth. Now, my quote for the week, I was intentional about it because I assumed, knowing things that Dwayne has done and what he's involved with, I picked a quote on collaboration. And he has used that word multiple times today. But Mother Teresa had a great quote on collaboration, and she said, "You can do what I cannot do. I can do what you cannot do. But together we can do great things." So I think we had a little more of that going on in everything we're involved with, because nothing really gets done typically solo. I mean, it just doesn't. Every successful endeavor, organization, business, whatever, it's always more. There's always multiple people doing good things together. And even when you see these most successful people you think have done all these great things, it's always a group that have helped them get there. Again, I just don't believe there's such thing as anybody solo. Even something we've talked about here. You know, we haven't shied away from talking about our religious beliefs here, and even Jesus had the 12 disciples to go out and share his word. So again, take that for what it's worth. So but again, I think collaboration is something that is just super, super important for things to get done here, not just in our community, but anywhere. So to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast, and please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We are always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at our website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And apparently, as Naomi reminds me, give us a good 5-star rating. That helps get the podcast noticed. Thanks again to Dwayne Burks for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.